Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to About Islam, the online publication platform that brings mainstream Islam to the world. I am Leila Abdullah Poulos, and I'm so happy and thrilled because this is the first panel in the Black Muslim Authors 2022 conference. Yay, alhamdulillah. This is our fourth year. Our second year on About Islam, and I want to thank everyone at About Islam for hosting us for the second year. Last year was really, really great. And so we're hoping that this year will be just as great. Okay. I have my co-organizer Enzima Hutchins of Every Kind of Lady. Assalamu alaikum, Enzima. How you doing?
Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum, everybody out there.
Are you all ready to go and ready to roll type of thing?
Yes.
Because you have an open mic later, right?
Yes. 1:15.
There's a lot of great stuff this year. We have the romance panel, which we're going to do now. We're going to have the brothers panel again. That did so well that we invited brothers back again. I think it's always an important perspective. And then today also we're going to have the open mic, some fabulous poets, some new poets, some returning poets. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. All right. But now let's kick it off with the romance panel, inshallah. Remember, if you're tuning in on About Islam's Facebook page, to share, like, and share. And you can also post questions. We'll be looking for questions from viewers about our topic. So that'll be great too, inshallah. And so I would like to welcome this is the romance panel, Love and Deen. Hold on, I'm echoing. Love and Deen. Okay, so this is going to be really, really exciting panel. And today we have Nasheed Jackson and Sara Allen. Nasheed has written poems, poetry, plays, and spoken word pieces that he's performed up and down the East Coast of the United States, winning and placing in poetry competitions. He also participated in national poetry and literary festivals in the UK. He is a romance author, and he has a very popular series, Her Justice series, which is Her Justice is one of my favorites. And we have Sara Allen. Sara is a British Muslim romance author whose focus is on the story rather than the content. She has been writing for almost 7 years, publishing her first novel with JWP. Since then, she's released 5 solo projects and completed an MA in creative writing. She doesn't see herself as an expert. I have to disagree, my lady. But a storyteller, and she enjoys the challenge. And there are also 2 authors in the Ramadan romance series that's coming out. We had the season 1 last year, the Ramadan Nights romance series, and so we're going to have season 2, and Sara and Nasheed Jackson are 2 of the authors for the Ramadan Nights series. How are you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah, great, wonderful.
Let's kick it off. The first thing that I always ask authors, and I think it's very, very important for Muslim authors who write romance. Why is it, it sounds like a trite question, but I think because romance gets such a bad rap in general, and especially in a lot of Muslim cultural spaces, romance gets a bad rap. Among Muslim authors, romance gets a bad rap. So what made you guys decide on romance, Sara?
I think it's writing about the connection between 2 people or 3 people, or a person and their family and their experiences, and how that comes about and leads into romance. So it's always more about the people, the couple, than the actual romance itself, I think.
Okay. So you feel like you want to show the process of your characters falling in love.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to show, that 2 people who don't know each other, and those small things that bring them together. Maybe they have a shared like of something. Maybe they have a shared dislike of something, possibly each other.
Oh, you do enemies to lovers?
Yeah, exactly. And then, that the story kind of builds itself up from wherever these two people are coming from. I mean, sometimes, it's not always this new love. Sometimes it's a new experience in love, or a person is coming from betrayal or mistrust, and then they've got to learn how to leave that baggage behind in order to find new love. So those are always the things that make me more interested in writing romance than just the romance.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times people just see when they see that a book is romance, there are automatic assumptions about it, and one of them is that it doesn't necessarily have to. It's not complex, but you're saying that you layer your characters because it's not the romance is maybe an element in it, but it's not the integral part that makes the character the character.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's got to be those layers within. I mean, our lives are so layered anyway, that there's got to be those kind of layers within a story to make it interesting for me as a writer anyway, and to make it interesting for a reader.
Yeah. And what about you, Nasheed? Now you're a Muslim male romance author. Now we already know that romance in the United States is dominated by women, especially white women, but there are male authors. But in the Muslim romance subgenre, there are dominated by women, Muslim women, a lot of Black Muslim women. And you're so far the sole male author that's been brave enough to say, I'm a romance author. What made you decide to accept that and embrace that as part of your authorship?
So I like what Sara said about new love. My stories, I'm thinking about my stories, and none of them are like new love, that new connection. My stories deal mostly with a couple that's already together that finds new love in their relationship. Like they reignite their love affair, right? But what made me get into love, writing love story, was, okay, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, right? Mm. And through all this fighting and this revolution going on, in the core, it's still a love story. That's all it is. It's a love story. It was so much of a love story that they brought it back the fourth time, 20 years later, just to tell that love story further. Mm. It's always a love story. So as a male, I like the action. I like the fighting and, revolution, all that other stuff. But and I noticed this though, in the last almost 30 years, I've been loved. Like I've been married for almost 30 years.
Oh, congratulations.
So,
mashallah, I've been married for almost 30 years. So, and I'm realizing just the other day that I've been loved for most of my life, right? So I think that's where my love stories come from also. Just able to, because I don't think I express myself enough in my relationship, so I just put it in books. And I hope she understands that. I put it in the books. I put it in the books. Sorry, baby.
Well, it's funny because one of the reasons why I chose romance was so that people can see, people not only falling in love or staying in love, but also the sensual aspect of it, of love and romance. And I noticed that one of the things, because when I was doing my graduate studies, I focused on Muslim romance and Muslim romance books. And one of the things that I noticed is, save one author who was supposed to be on, but she hasn't been able to get on yet, Papacia Fazar, that the central aspect was very much void in a lot of Muslim romances. So the very few that there were, and I had to end up honing in on Black Muslim romances, because Black Muslim authors were the only ones that were really writing romances here in the United States. You know, the majority of Muslim authors that are not Black were not writing romances. And, you know, if they were, it was more like kind of like a YA type of romance, not adult. And so there were limitations to that. And so I wanted to show the connections between faith, love, and sensuality in my book. So oftentimes I do have like that love at first sight type of thing, because I do have couples who are together, but I like the love at first sight or because things happen so fast when it comes to Muslim courtship and getting married. You know, very few times, a lot of times, that space, that courtship process before getting married, it can be very, very short. You know, and so because they're, you know, for Muslims who want to be obedient to Allah, they do not have sex outside of marriage. So I have to kind of get to that point as soon as quickly as possible. So it's often that they fall in love and they have their courtship and everything like that fairly quickly, because I want to get to that the romantic and the sensual aspect of it, because that's what I want to show. I want to show that and show all of the layers of it in the book, in my books. And so I think that that's really important. Do you guys think that that's important to kind of show the sensual side? And like, how do you navigate through that? Like Sara, for instance, we're coming out with the next season of Ramadan romances. Okay. And one of the things that we ran across in the first season among the authors was this trepidation about including steamy content. Some they're using their sweet romance pen name, so they're writing a sweet romance. And I wanted to include some sensuality. So another author wanted to include some sensuality, but you know, there was still some trepidation on how much sensuality to include, because it's about Muslims, about Ramadan. Do you feel that trepidation when it comes to writing Muslim characters? Because I know that you have books with non-Muslim characters that have sensual.
You had to say it. I
had to say it because for me, I don't think that there is a difference. I can understand not wanting to show things like premarital sex or something like that with Muslim characters. I can understand that. I can dig that. But once they're married, once they're together, or like with Nasheed's book, where they're already in a relationship, do you feel trepidation about being as sensual with your Muslim characters as your non-Muslim characters?
I kind of think, I mean, even with non-Muslim characters, apart from, I think the last story that I wrote where I just opened that bedroom door, slammed it wide open, was Disposable. And she wasn't even the one that was doing the deed. It was her husband with somebody else. And
yeah, I read it.
Yeah, I just gave the whole, you know, it was like a whole, you know.
Oh, it was erotic. It was very erotic. Yes.
The whole camera thing. So, but I kind of stepped away from this I think more personal reasons, because I kind of didn't want to. I'm not an erotic writer. I understand that, because for me, it's always about the connection. Maybe there is a connection in the sex, and maybe there's not. But I kind of, I'm just thinking about what I've written recently. I wrote a story just the other day, which was just something really short. And in the story, I do go into this beginning of the act, but the act was between the main character and his mother, which was like, yeah, eyebrows going up. Yeah, because because of what the story was about. Because he'd had this, it was a story about a man who'd had 700 lives. And in his previous life, he was the boyfriend of this woman. And then in the next life, he's her son. So she doesn't see any difference as he's grown up and he's looking like this man that she loved, who died. She doesn't see any difference. So when I was writing it, it's a weird kind of juxtaposition to be in, because do you write this scene with this man and his mother, but they're also two people who once loved each other. So, but for Muslim romance, I haven't quite got to that stage with my story yet, and it really does. I mean, it really just depends on how the story pans out, because I don't like to write sex without there being a reason. I mean, if there is a reason for it, if the story aims in that direction, I don't think that I would stop, regardless of whether they were Muslim or non-Muslim.
Okay, so it's really about the trajectory of your characters and your plot that kind of determine the level of sensuality that you're going to include in a particular story.
Yeah.
And you'll do that with Muslim characters as well as non-Muslim characters.
Yeah.
What if it's something like premarital sex or adultery, or like in this book, like something that's bordering on incest?
I don't think that I would shy away from it.
Okay.
Where I am now in my writing, I don't think that I would shy away from it as much as I would have done maybe 2-3 years ago, because I think that as a Muslim writer, I think I owe it not to the audience, but to myself, to be honest about my experiences as a writer and what I have seen, what I've experienced, what's not spoken about. It may be taboo for you as a Muslim, because you don't want to highlight this, we're not perfect. We hope to be, to step in the footsteps of Al-Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's not always possible for us, and people do fall off that path, and I think that those things, they become a story of redemption, in effect, if you're honest about where the story's going.
Well, the funny thing is that there is a rich history of romantic and erotic literature in Muslim culture. I mean, there have been scholars who have written about it, written all kinds of poetry and erotic prose. Imam Suyuti, one of them, which is like, surprise, they don't show that part. They don't show that stuff. And some of them dealt with those taboo issues and those taboo topics. Because it's part of life and it's a real part of life. And so, I mean, some of them have even written some homoerotic stuff, but, I guess that was their comfort level type of thing. And they would always put these actions are haram, but they would still put their characters doing it because that's what human beings do. And so and there may be a room for redemption in those stories as well. What about you, Nasheed? Like, I remember back in the day, you were about having that bedroom door closed to the point I was a little frustrated. You know. Well, you know, there is a demand among romance readers, and it depends because it's such a spectrum. Like, there's some readers who don't want any of it. You know, like they want that what they call a clean romance, which means it doesn't have any sex in it whatsoever. And then it could go into like a sweet romance where it may have some sensuality in it, and then they fade to black or close the bedroom door, and then it becomes more of a sensual romance you can have, and then erotic romance. Okay, and I think there's a blurred line between erotic romance and erotica that's emerging, especially in spaces like TikTok, where there are readers who want that quote unquote smut to the point where the romantic plot takes a back seat. Well, that's not romance anymore if the romantic plot is taking the back seat. So there is a demand for readers and Muslim readers who want levels of sensuality in their books. I know I'm not the only Muslim reader who has
you're
said,
not. You're not.
Who has said to you, wait a second, brother, why you do that?
Yeah, I'm just saying you're not the only one. I ran into a few more.
Well, because we're romance readers, and so there's certain expectation of romance readers. So how do you, as an author, how do you kind of navigate that? Do you want, like, does the story speak and want a sexual scene? Do you fight against it? Are you more open to it now? Like, how do you navigate through that?
It depends on how I want to tell the story. I know the characters speak to me. Like, the characters tell me, actually, when I sit down and write, the characters tell me what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. I promise you. So yeah, it just depends on what part of the story I want to see. I want the reader to see. I want to see. Part of the story I want to tell. I really do want to, because for me, I really like the story. I don't necessarily like the sex part. I like the story that led to the sex. Like, how do we get here? Which is why, I mean, I want to probably dig into that new love thing, because that feeling that you have, you know, when you're courting someone, that's a great feeling to write about. And I just never thought about it before. So I really like the story of the emotions that lead to the sex. Okay, so when I wrote the story Halal Nympho, I mean, the title itself just tells the story that I want to tell you about some sex. And the character, Crystal, she ends up having, you know, a life of, you know, where she was just a nympho before Islam. So now it's like, how do I tame this? How do I tame this desire that I have? Because I believe in Allah and I believe in the Messenger, like, I got to do this within a marriage. And she tried to do that within a marriage, but her husband couldn't handle it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to tell that story. But most of the time, I just want to tell the story that led to the sex. And if the story that led to the sex, one other scene in Her Justice that I wrote, him and Justice and his wife was having an argument. And at the end of the argument, they just ended up having sex. And I needed to show you how passionate this sex was. So that's why I showed that scene. So it just depends on, you know, the story I want to see. But I do want to maybe experiment with the leading up, the new love thing. And, you know, maybe doing some haram stuff, you know, before marriage, you know what I mean? Because we human. We Muslim, but we human.
We
and
are
fall
human.
into the trap sometimes. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I've been grappling so hard. Because in one of my series, I have a book where two characters, they actually end up engaging in premarital sex. Now, one of the things I had said that I didn't want to do was I didn't want to show those scenes. So like in one book, Built on Broken Dreams, the main character, Miriam, was seduced, but I didn't show any of that. So all the sensual scenes, all the sexual scenes are with her and her husband. So after they're married, so, because once they're married, once the character is married, I don't know, I guess I feel a certain amount of liberty to show all kinds of things. And I think that I use those sex scenes to actually feed the plot, so much so that they're different, and they go along the trajectory of the plot type of thing. So, but in this new one, there's like the characters desperately want to show that confliction between their desire for each other and their faith. Because one is a really good girl, you know, she's like a good Muslim girl, wears niqab, everything like that, goes to like all of the, you know, like the Muslim sisters events and everything like that, teaches Quran and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's all of that. And she runs across someone who wants her. She runs across someone who wants her, and he goes after her type of thing, and she gives in. So like when I write a sex scene, it definitely feeds into the characterization. So what is happening with the character at that time and everything like that. So it's just like, how do I not show that heart-ripping, you know, moment of giving in to her desires, despite the fact that she knows it's wrong, but she wants this person so much and everything like that. So like, how do I, but it's before they get married. So do I show it? Do I not show it type of thing? And I'm it's still in my head, like the characters and I are fighting about it, because I think it is something that that happens. I do want to show, like, you know, I want to show that heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching feeling and moment where you know to do that, you should be doing the right thing, but you don't do it.
Mm.
Right. And I think you can show even, it's a chance to show even more what happens after, like what that character does afterwards. You know what I mean? Do they repent? Do they just live with it? Or, you know what I'm saying? Does it take him further off the path of his, you know what I'm saying?
Stuff happens.
Show what happens afterwards. You know what I mean? The emotions that they go through afterwards, because I'm sure there are. I want to do that too.
Because that's a reality and that's a real thing. And that's something that I didn't do with one book, but with this book, it just seems so important to show that, you know, just like with any other central scene. So it's just like, you know, with Muslim characters, I kind of gave myself a parameter, but now I feel like the story needs so much for me to break out of that parameter. Type of thing, which is hard. It can be very, very hard, because you have to find the point where you're just like, okay, well, that's a little too far. Like I went, like with one of my books, I think I went a little too far. Too far. Only because of some of the words that I used. So like even my readership who are comfortable with sensuality weren't necessarily comfortable with the level of erotic content that I put into that book type of thing. So you want to reach a level, but you have a limit. You want to set your limit, but sometimes the story needs something. Demand something. So do you give into it then, Sara? Do you say that's what I'm going to do no matter what? Type of thing, where throw caution to the wind?
I think you do have to give in to you do have to give in. I mean, your story, that story that you're talking about, it's funny that you would think to write about the sex after marriage rather than before, because for me, I would write about the before, because you know what you're going to get afterwards. Do you understand? So because all the excitement of those initial connections are not happening after marriage because they've already happened. And
I don't know, you got that first time, the first few nights, the first few times can be very exciting because you've been waiting all of that time.
yeah, but not when you've
But-
already done it.
Right, you already done it though. Yeah.
So when you've already done it, you're comfortable. I mean, all that discomfort that you feel when you get married,
Yeah.
it's all gone. All of that is gone because you know each other already intimately. So there's nothing for me I'm going to write about how I kissed him on the cheek and, tongue in ear.
I have to push back on that a little bit because I think that what happens, one of the things that I like to show, and I think that what happens after marriage is that you develop a sensual dialogue between each other, and that can grow and shift and change, and it can shift and change with what's going on in your life too. So like those type of things can happen. So like, there may be more, the sensual relationship can evolve into something else as the couple opens up. They may encounter issues where they need that they need to overcome when it comes to that. Like I would include various levels of that in the sensual scene. So I think that outside of the inside and outside of marriage, I think that you can make a sensual scene that is very satisfying to the readers. Okay. And especially since you can do the characters can be doing different positions, find themselves in different situations and circumstances. And I think that to liberate yourself, to throw that caution to the wind, to liberate yourself, so that you have the ability to then show those things that reflect on people's lives. I mean, I've gotten contacted by readers who say that the story reinvigorated their marriage type of thing. So, I think that you can show both that. You can show they could be a hot, sexy couple inside marriage, not necessarily an outside marriage, like that type of thing. Like you can show both of them. But I'm wondering if the outside marriage part, is that glorifying premarital sex and everything like that? Because that will be the first thing that will be told. And I'm like, well, Muslims write about murder. Is that glorifying murder, telling people to go out and shoot somebody?
No, I mean, yes, I mean, they're going to have sex, but at the same time, you're telling a story and you're in control. So you're telling what's wrong. Like, I feel wrong. I know this is wrong. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you're telling the story. So you're letting the reader know what the character is thinking. I'm just going to throw caution in the wind, and I'm going to go with my emotions and do this. And I'll ask forgiveness for all I forgive me. Like, but I'm going to do this right now. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it causes that. Nah, just make it a good story, Just make it a good story.
Well, I'm wondering, like, with all the other elements, I'm wondering, like, with all the elements of storytelling and where you want to make connections with readers to see themselves in the stories. Would that be the purpose, is to reach out to readers as well? Because, when you think about Muslim culture, Muslim society that we all navigate through, we all know that we're not perfect. And so highlighting those imperfections, and then whether it be like, someone that is like, in one book I have an imam who has a certain predilection for strippers. Hey, it's real though. It's real. And I show like how he tortures himself because of his desire for that. And the fact that like he's the upstanding imam of the community and everything like that. And he's like keeping all of this stuff secret and everything. And he's actually exploited because of it. He's actually exploited because of it. But it's something that's real, something that we know is real. So when it comes to something like a couple struggling with their desire for each other and giving into that struggle, that's real too. That's real too. So do we like eschew that for respectability, like this whole notion of respectability and piety? Or do we show that in our stories to make the connection with readers, and then to show like Nasheed said, like the redemption type of thing? Like how do we, is that the trajectory that we take when we're including these things? Or are we just including them because that's what certain readers want?
I don't think that you can say that you're including a fact of Muslim life, because that's a fact. I know so many. I've heard of so many stories where the couple, you know, go into a marriage intimate with each other already.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's glorifying it. I don't think it's saying that, you know, oh look what Muslims do. I think we're being real about about what we face as Muslims in Western societies, because we are seeing sex everywhere. They advertise a car and they've got a woman draped over it. Women are out there with miniskirts on during the summer and a bra. If a brother is married, or even a sister is, if a brother is engaged, sorry, not married, if a brother is engaged and, you know, he's seeing this, he's working in an environment where there's women all over him constantly during the day, and he's engaged, he's not going to have desires, he's not going to have nafs. He is.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting married in a couple of months, or we're getting married in a month. You know, what's the problem? I've seen it. I've heard it. So.
Well, and also the thing is that, you know, there have been women coming to the masjid 8 months pregnant, ready to get married, type of thing. You know, we know that these things exist.
Yeah.
And because romance can be so complex, the story itself can be so complex. And as romance authors, we may want to include these things in our romances to show the complexity of actual life, you know, and that it becomes important that sometimes you don't get to that point in a perfect way, type of thing. You know, sometimes, you know, there's your past you have to deal with, your present you have to deal with, type of thing, and what's going on and what's happening, you know, in with the characters. So I think that becomes very important. But I think we always have this pushback among authors too, you know, where romance authors, where we have to push back against so much when it comes to including certain content that other authors don't necessarily have to push back against, which I find very frustrating, you know, because there's all kinds of books, which is great, with all kinds of things happening, but it's just like, you know, like killing and, you know, magic and all of this stuff that they have the liberty to include, but we have to always push back when it comes to what we want to include in our books. And it's already bad enough that we each go through that internal struggle of what we're going to include in our books. And especially since now we're starting to find out more and more that historically that this is something that has occurred, that Muslims have been writing about romance and erotic content for centuries. And so now here in the US and the UK where you are, Sarah. I mean, you're the only romance author though. You know, at least I got a few romance authors over here in the States, but you're like the only romance author in the UK, well, openly romance author.
Yeah.
So how do you find interacting with other authors? Do you find that you get any support from other authors when it comes to your romance writing? What is some of the stuff that they say to you?
I mean, I don't think it's, I mean, I've kind of been off the radar for the last year, really, when I was doing my MA. So this is kind of like me leaping back in with 2 feet kind of thing. So, but it's not, I mean, I find that there is support in certain things. It's more that, oh, you're Muslim. Oh, and you write romance. Oh, it's more like that. That's really interesting. It's not like, it's not actual support, that kind of thing. I think that the, as I was saying before, that over here, when we talk about an indie published author, it's really looked down on, regardless of what you're writing. It's not as the respect of a despite having Mark Dawson and there's another indie author who writes a white lady who writes she writes detective novels. Her lead character is a woman detective. So, but unless you're like on the par with a traditionally published author, which those two are, you're kind of ignored. You really are. You really are ignored. And I found the same thing while I was doing my MA, that people just kind of like, oh, you self-published? No. Yeah, as I was saying, that kind of thing. So it's you're not looked on as anything. Oh wow, you've taken your writing to that level. So no, it's not looked on like that. So it's very difficult.
What about you, Nasheed? You're a Muslim male author. How did the brothers treat you?
It's wonderful, man. I mean, I don't, as far as finding other authors, I don't. And you know, when you become Muslim, it's like we stop reading fiction. I don't know why.
Yeah.
We watch movies all the time.
Yeah.
But as far as when it comes to reading, we don't read fiction. We read, Islamic books,
Yeah.
by Sheikh, So as far as support, when they find out, I don't get no pushback. I don't get no pushback, because I'm gonna be me anyway. So they got it.
Wait.
How about throwing punches?
Oh, you gotta have tenacity to be a romance author. You definitely.
Really though.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the men who have read my books, they absolutely enjoy them, and I haven't heard anything different. Like I heard, man, in the beginning of some of the books, man, but I finished it. It was really good. That's what they end up saying. But as far as getting pushback from it, or astaghfirullah, you're not supposed. I don't get that, because I'm gonna do what I want to do anyway. So it don't matter if they say it anyway.
Yeah. Like I said, you have to have a certain level of tenacity. I know that among Muslim authors that we network with, that there's always this conversation about content, what we're going to include, what we're not going to include, and then what readers expect and what readers want. That's always something. There's a lot of different things that you have to think about in order to get the story that you want to the readers. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for joining us. Next up is the Muslim Brothers panel, right?
Yes.
Yes, you're next up at noon. And we're gonna have some wonderful brothers talking about that whole thing. Well, they don't read fiction. People don't read fiction, and Muslim men, male authors who write outside of certain genres, so like outside of children's books and stuff like that. But those who write like adult fiction face certain challenges, and so join Nasheed and the other authors to talk about that. Thank you for joining us. Inshallah, you can keep up to date on the conference by visiting the About Islam website at www.aboutislam.net. You can also come back on at 12 o'clock for the brothers panel, inshallah, and check out what we got going on at About Islam. There's a lot of wonderful things here on Facebook, on our website, and also on Twitter, inshallah. And I will see you guys later. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
Wa
salam.
alaikum salam.